Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another animation analysis video, and today we are going to be taking a look at the brand new tech Dokkan Fest Super Trunks. This guy kind of came out of nowhere, to be honest with you. We were anticipating the announcement of the next JP Dokkan Fest. Obviously, this one coming directly after Tanabata, and is kind of the celebration that is going to reside in between Tanabata and the worldwide celebration, which will be the one after this Dokkan Fest. And it turns out that Trunks was the character. This was kind of a little bit of an out-of-nowhere release, though, because we were expecting the reveal, or at least the teaser to the reveal, to be last night. But literally tonight, the teaser was shown, which... rest in peace, the boy Krillin. Everybody thought that when this teaser dropped that this was going to be a Krillin Dokkan Fest, but Krillin is talking about Super Trunks' transformation in this, and it turned out that the Dokkan Fest is actually Super Trunks. So that is who we're going to be taking a look at today. Rest in peace, my boy Krillin, though. He literally was trending because people thought that we were finally getting a Krillin Dokkan Fest. R.I.P. my boy. Maybe someday, my bald friend. But anyway, we are going to take a look at these animations one time through. And as per usual, then we will obviously take a look at them in the slow-mo. And like I always like to say, excuse me. I mean, I guess technically used to say, because I say it in all the previous videos, that I am by no means an animator or an animation professional. I just take a look at Dokkan animations all the time, and as well take a look at Dokkan assets. So I feel like I have a pretty good idea of what makes a good Dokkan animation. Now, there are a couple of interesting things and a bunch of tabs up there that you've probably noticed why we are kind of going to be going a little bit deep into the boy Trunks here with some context behind this guy, because he has some very interesting, I don't even know what you would call it, like mechanics, shenanigans that are related to his actual animations. Obviously, we are looking at a Super Saiyan Trunks here that transforms into a Super Trunks, right? The first passive skill transformation that we've had in quite some time, and you can see that he has a attacking active skill. Now, what is really interesting about this guy, right, is the fact that he has a active skill in both forms. And the weird thing is, they don't actually show it in this video. I'm going to talk about this right now rather than talking about it when we actually get to the active skill, just to kind of get it out of the way in the beginning of the video, because it's just something that I kind of want to explain and get on the table as we're going through this. So this guy, if we take a look here, I mean, obviously, I'm sure most of you who are watching probably can't read this because this is in Japanese, but the boy Minato did the translations for Trunks here, right? And it is actually the same active skill, not only the same active skill in name, right, of the actual, like, you know, name of the active skill, you know, however, whatever, the super attack or active skill is called, like burning attack or super kamehameha, whatever. The active skill name is the exact same, and the requirements, interestingly enough, are the same for Trunks and Super Trunks. Super Saiyan Trunks, I guess, is what I'll technically call the first form, but they have different active skill effects depending on whether or not you use it in the Super Saiyan or Super State. Now, I did ask Minato here, it's the same active skill for both forms, right, just with a different effect, right, obviously meaning like what it actually does, and of course a different transformation, meaning like Trunks' actual transformation. So, what this means, and the reason why I am assuming that they didn't include this animation in here, is because this active skill actually works a lot more like Krillin and Gohan's active skill, aka more like a costume change, even though this is a transformation. Now, Gohan and Krillin's active skill and them actually changing into the other costume, the way that the game considers this, right, is a transformation, even though the game calls it in the text a costume change, because they're not actually transforming. Obviously, they're just putting on different clothes. But in the game's data, it's treated like a transformation. And I believe that that is the same thing that is probably going on with Trunks here, because if we take a look at this active skill, which I'm sure probably most of you remember from Gohan and Krillin, this is their active skill, right, where they get the power-up. And they have the exact same active skill when they get the armor. And the other interesting thing is, if we scroll through this video, right, we can see, obviously, them putting the armor on, and then we see their super attacks, right? Of course. but we don't actually see the active skill displayed again in this essay showcase. So I am assuming that they're basically just doing the same thing that they did here with Gohan and Krillin, where they're basically just showing you one version of the active skill. And obviously it's just because it is literally a slight change where they're literally just wearing a different outfit here. And obviously for Trunks, he will basically just be less bulky and just be a Super Saiyan rather than Super Trunks. Now, obviously, all of this is kind of going off of the information that I have right now because, of course, I'm recording this video about an hour-ish after all of this information has dropped, right? The night that this information has dropped. So, if this entire spiel ends up having incorrect information in it for some reason, I will leave a comment in the pinned comment below. And if we do get, for some reason, a different animation for this active skill, right, and it's not the same as I'm describing it, which by all intents and purposes it should be because of, you know, all the information that we have before us, not only will I leave a comment about it below, I'll probably leave a comment regardless, just confirming, yes, the active skill for Super Saiyan 1 is just the same. Trunks just looks a little bit different. But if the animation does turn out to be different, which I don't think it will be, I'll do a quick, like, YouTube short going over that as a little animation analysis kind of aside thing. But regardless, though, I'm now ready to take a look at his animations. I know that was a bit of a explanation, but I just wanted to make sure that was clear, so you're not like, what do you mean? Why does he have two different active skills when I mentioned it in the video, but there's only one in the animations? Well, that's the reason why, because they also did it before, right? Like we literally just looked at. They did the same thing with, you know, Gohan and Krillin. So it makes sense that they didn't show the active skill with a different transformation for this one. But let's go ahead and get into it here, starting off with Gohan. By the way, the only other thing that I want to mention as we're setting this up for the slow speed here is, unfortunately, because I am doing this video right when the animations drop, right, and uploading it the same day. Unfortunately, we do not have the side-by-side comparison for the anime, right? This is the only unfortunate thing about trying to get these videos out as quick as possible, because obviously, you know, the YouTube algorithm likes it when you do that. You know, we don't have the side-by-side all the time when that happens. So, unfortunately, that's just kind of, it is what it is type of thing, right? We're just going to have to work with what we got. All right, so let's go ahead and start off. We have the side banner Gohan unit. And I will say, one thing that I really, really like about these animations, right? This kind of, you know, goes to Trunks as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in a kind of a different way with Trunks too. But I think that the Cell Saga shading and sort of style of these animations, right, is really, really on point. Even when Dokkan animations aren't necessarily the craziest in terms of the actual animation itself, they have been doing a spectacular job on kind of keeping the theming, right, the look, the vibe, whatever kind of words you would like to use for that, of the particular era of Dragon Ball that the animations come from. You know, Cell Saga recently, obviously we had GT with Goku, right, all that good type of good stuff. So with Gohan flying up here, I think that the fly up looks fine. The only thing that is really a little bit jarring is when Gohan's flying up, you can absolutely see the change in assets there, which is a little bit jarring, especially considering Gohan's hair looks pretty different, if I do say so myself. It looks a lot longer in this more higher quality asset than it does in this little bit of a lower quality one. Hydrate or dihydrate, by the way, baby. So with him flying up towards the sky, besides that pose change, I think this part looks fine, right? Obviously, he gets a little bit closer to the camera, his hair is moving a little bit, and they try and do this little zoom effect. I will say, when it comes to his punches and kicks, I don't really feel like they have a ton of impact. And honestly, I feel like this looks like a lot older of an animation than this is. This is a 2023 animation, and I feel like that this section almost looks like a free-to-play unit. Now, obviously, when we are talking about the unfeatured unit, we always have to kind of take it with a grain of salt because, of course, it's not the main Dokkan Fest unit, and it is the side banner, you know, unfeatured unit. So, of course, we can't judge it to the same tier as Dokkan Fest unit, but still, it just feels a little bit lackluster. It's definitely no AGL Goku Black, but I feel like it could still be a little bit better for sure. Regardless, we have this pretty cool shot of Gohan flying in here. I like that they actually animate his hair, and a very interesting camera angle here with obviously zooming into Gohan's face. I quite like that. However, it's a little bit jarring because you would think this would maybe be like behind Gohan now, but they kind of just cut to also being in front of him again. Like, what was the point of the pan, right? What was the point of panning the camera that kind of implies he's going to punch upward to only have his other hand be the other way and not have this hand be cocked back? It's just really weird in the continuity. Obviously, then, though, we have Gohan ready up to fire this blast, and I gotta say, the rapid face change there, not really feeling it. Definitely could have had a couple more frames of transitioning between expressions here. I feel like it's just very choppy, right? I think is the best way to kind of describe this. That, however, is a very good transition, with obviously the kind of blinding light, right, from the actual attack having this impact frame here be how they transition between Gohan's poses. That is very, very well done for sure. It's always nice when Dokkan does this type of stuff to kind of mask the quick pose change sometimes, right? It's a good animation technique. I don't know if it has a specific word. It probably does. If you're an animation guru, let me know in the comments. But I do like this impact frame right here. And then they obviously show Gohan firing the blast, which I gotta say, this shot definitely looks very nice, albeit only on the screen for a couple seconds, with Gohan's hair moving and all the rest of that good stuff. The very anime-esque background, right, as well, with the different colors there too, which looks really good. Gohan's blast flying towards the enemy before finally exploding with this really old Dokkan explosion effect. That's like an ancient Dokkan explosion effect. However, they don't keep it on screen for long, as they have this shot of Gohan obviously and having the explosion above him. The explosion does look pretty good. This will probably end up being Gohan's KO screen. And I will say, at least for the couple of shortcomings in this, they do actually animate Gohan a little bit here on this end part, which I feel like a lot of other essays would not do, but you can see his actual hair is fluttering in the wind a little bit, which is a nice little touch. So yeah, it's okay, right? It's nothing crazy. I think it's okay, right? Is basically the bottom line of the you know, essay for the unfeatured unit here. I will say, I do feel like it is really short, which I know that not all essays have to be crazy long, but I do feel like it is quite a short essay, though to be fair, this attack in the anime is not really that long, but like, still feels really short. And I will say that is something that is kind of going to be a consistent theme with this video as we go into more of Super Trunks' animations. However, I kind of think that most likely the reason why that is because, again, keep in mind, this is the Dokkan Fest between Tanabata, a celebration where they have really good animations for the Tanabata unit, and Worldwide, where they have really, really good animations for the Worldwide units, because obviously Worldwide, Tanabata, you know, obviously Anniversary, right, are like some of Dokkan's biggest celebrations of the year. So it makes sense for what some people may call a filler Dokkan celebrations. The essays may not be as long or as high quality, which I don't think is necessarily the case here. But let's get into the boy Super Trunks before I kind of get ahead of myself here. Let's start off with the Super Saiyan, obviously, essay. First of all, I always talk about, I feel like, that even with lower quality animations, or maybe lower quality isn't the right word, maybe animations that I just feel like aren't as great, right? I feel like at least the assets still look pretty good. Who drew this, bro? My man looks ugly. Oh my gosh. And like, listen, I don't want to be mean. Like, I don't want to rip into the artist here, bro. But obviously, like, you know, the whole point of this series is to nitpick and be analytical and give my opinion on it. And that's just the way I feel, bro. Like, Trunks' face is just not it. You know, this looks like something that's like a fan animation. I know that sounds like maybe I'm dunking on fan animations now because I just said it looks ugly, but it kind of looks like somebody who hasn't gotten to their peak yet, right? Like they're still kind of a learning artist. And obviously we're just talking about Trunks himself, not the animation, right? Obviously the shading is fine on him too. Or it's like, it kind of looks like somebody who's like learning animation and is slowly growing, right? Rather than a giant conglomerate company. Trunks' hair also does not look correct, in my opinion. I don't know. I know that the Super Saiyan hair kind of has this look, but they feel like they're too far out on the side of his head. And the fact that you can also see the back a little bit, I mean, I guess that's normal, but I don't know. This whole thing just looks a little yucky to me, to be honest with you. Regardless, though, the aura does look pretty good, albeit it is 2 frames just kind of flashing in between each other. Funny enough, I feel like the impact frames, can we go back to that real quick? The impact frame almost looks better than the actual one. Maybe it's just because it's in black and white. is the reason why. I will say, upon me saying that that does look kind of ugly, I feel like that face looks a tiny bit better, but I almost wonder if it's just because that's how it looked in the actual anime, which again, when we get the comparison video, which I'll retweet from whoever makes it on Twitter, I'm, you know, maybe thinking that that might be the reason why. But to be fair, Dokkan is still improved upon the original anime a lot of times, right? When characters' faces would look a little bit weird, in Dokkan they make them look better in the actual animation, so I don't know. Regardless, though, we have the aura kind of sparking off of Trunks. First of all, right, with this shot here, I know what they're going for. They're having Trunks kind of like go down a little bit, right? Sink down before he kind of flies forward a little bit. And I think that it's weird because like this asset looks pretty decent for Trunks, right? With him obviously like flying past the screen. And they have some good implication of movement, obviously going from that shot to that shot. However, though, I just feel like it looks a little bit janky. Like, I don't even know if there's not enough frames in there. Like, it kind of feels like maybe they could add a couple more in there, but in full motion, it looks fine. I just feel like it looks a little awkward. That's just kind of the feeling that I get from it. We have Trunks flying forward here, right? Which is literally just a static PNG. Does his hair move for this? No, his hair does not even move for this section. Okay, that's one for Gohan then, I guess. They do transition, though, from this asset to the one where he has his legs kind of a little bit tighter. Obviously, you know, this is supposed to imply like he's kind of farther along the flight path, right? Before obviously arriving at second form. So I will say the aura that they used for this section with the actual like way that it's animated definitely looks very, very nice for sure. We now move on to Trunks flying in front of Cell and moving back. I will say that does look very, very nice. This whole sequence, I have a feeling, is going to be a very underrated part of Trunks' animations, where he's kind of flying in front of him, right? Unfortunately, we get a face full of Stinky Sprite, but that's not really the fault of the animation. Regardless, though, Trunks flying back looks fantastic, and then him obviously moving back a little bit, and that tiny bit of movement in the back. Let me see if I can capture that here, kind of in the frames, right? When Trunks is basically fully moved back here, and then we have, right, him obviously kind of move up and back a little bit. I feel like that's very natural before we finally have this big kick. And I will say, obviously, this asset transition is a little bit of a big jump, but to be fair, it's supposed to be quick and snappy because obviously Trunks is flying down and going to kick Cell. I do kind of wish that they had Trunks a little bit bigger, so you could actually see him more in this frame. And unfortunately, Stinky Sprite moment strikes again. Because of how the sprites are, they can't really have one of Cell being kicked in the stomach the opposite way. I feel like there is a sprite for that where the character's facing backwards, but I suppose not because they're using this one, which is like where Cell would be kicked in the stomach. But this is almost like, you know, Trunks should be on our side of the screen or on the other side of Cell if this is how Cell is reacting to getting kicked. Because otherwise his stomach would be out because he'd be getting kicked in the back in this instance. But again, that's just the sprites. That's not really the fault of the animations. Regardless, though, Cell does end up flying away. My boy flabbergasted, by the way. Oh my gosh. We have, obviously, Trunks go off screen, and I do quite like this. Having Trunks zoom back in, right, with kind of like a little bit of a teleport effect here. That is pretty cool, obviously trying to imply how quickly he is moving forward, right, before he arrives in front of Cell to give him the old bop. And I think that that fist is pretty good. I will say, I did kind of feel like when looking at this, that the actual animation on the end here was a little bit weird. I think it was this frame right here. I don't know, I feel like there should just be one more frame in between this of him moving his fist like that, because obviously it's supposed to be like Trunks accounting for the recoil, because after that it looks just fine. But that one little like pop, I don't know, it bothers me personally. Again, obviously, you know, very nitpicking this. Now, we do have Trunks here, right, after the card art is shown, which, by the way, I think this card art is pretty cool. But I will say, I don't know if it feels like Dokkan Fest enough, right? At this point, like, any character can get a Dokkan Fest, and I think that that's just fine. In fact, they did a video on this channel, like, what characters, you know, deserve a Dokkan Fest. And I think it's fine if Super Trunks gets one, but this feels a lot more like a SSR of an unfeatured character to me. I don't know. Regardless, though, This animation of Trunks launching these ki blasts feels very lackluster to me. I am going to assume that, again, this is the anime's L, because obviously this is just Trunks, like, quite literally a solid PNG of my boy standing there, right? Basically doing nothing. They do have his arms move back a little bit in the beginning, which is nice. And as the ki blasts are flying, they do have his hair move. And you can obviously see that they kind of have the sort of like light that is reflecting, I guess, right? Kind of shining onto Trunks' face and hair, right? Obviously, that sort of look and effect is reflected, no pun intended, in obviously the assets that they use for Trunks here. But this animation just feels kind of like lame, I guess. It just feels like very basic, and the explosion effect I think looks fine with all the little rapid bits hitting Trunks. But I will say, this one does feel a little bit quick too, right? I mean, it's quite literally like Trunks stances up, flies in, right? He kicks Cell, and then he punches Cell, and then he hits him with a bunch of ki blasts. To be fair, this fight, as far as I remember, was not very long. And again, maybe that's a reason why they chose to do this Dokkan Fest now. Because obviously, right, they can do a little bit more shorter animations to prepare for the absolute gas that they're going to be giving us during Worldwide. I cannot wait to do those animation analysis videos. However, it still does feel a little bit short to me. Because Dokkan sometimes does add things from different moments of characters to kind of prolong the animation. So it's just kind of interesting to me. Alright, so we have this very nice asset of Trunks, his hand right here, which I'm going to be curious to see if there's a full Trunks asset attached. There's probably not, knowing how they do the animations with the assets. But we obviously have Trunks kind of lift his hand up again. And sort of the same art style returns here for the part that I was saying kind of looks a little bit yucky in the beginning. And here's what I will comment on this. I think this Trunks 100% looks so much better. However, his hair almost looks completely different than the way that it was animated in that other frame in the beginning of these essays, right? If we go back to this right here, right? So keep this image in mind. Trunks' hair is in these big, thick chunks, right? His ponytail is very, very chunky in the back, right? And if we go to here, look at how thin these strands of hair are, right? I guess it's just because they're drawn a little bit differently. I'm trying to get to the frame that is like right before. Oh, that actually covers it up the whole way. Okay, well, I guess we'll just use this as the comparison here. Like, look how thin these look and how almost like, I don't even know the right word to describe this. Almost like his hair is like kind of pulled out and a little like separated, right? Like very thinned out, almost like my boy has some kind of like hair condition. I don't even know how to describe it. Like, they just look like very thin strands, not very chunky, right? Very elongated, right? And then we go back to my man stanced up for the active skill, right? And they are so much thicker in nature, right, here than they are in that shot before. It just feels a little bit inconsistent. Again, maybe that's just the way that it's drawn in the anime, but it's kind of weird to me personally. Regardless, we have Trunks power up. I will say this power up is pretty cool, if I do say so myself. I like the way that they animate this with obviously having the beginning of the aura kind of flare up. And then you have this really cool, I guess you would call this like an impact frame, right? I mean, kinda. It almost looks like Trunks is on fire, honestly, in this frame. But regardless, right, obviously it's very cool frame of like the aura completely flaring up and engulfing Trunks before obviously kind of being in the background, and you can see him bulking up there a little bit. I think that the transformation is pretty well done, right? The camera panning up there looks very, very nice. The cut to Trunks kind of leaning down. Lots of struggling, I will say here. I was going to comment, honestly, when I watched this for the first time, on kind of how choppy, and I'm not talking about like Trunks shaking like a maniac here, right? I'm talking about like the quick pose changes that they have here as he's kind of crouching down, right? Like I'm talking like the big ones, right? Like going from his head down, right, to up here, right? Not like his obviously in between frames where he's kind of like shaking his body a lot, right? Like his like from this to this, right? Obviously that's fine, right? Because of course, you know, that's how it is in the anime, right? He's like shaking, he's powering up. you know, getting real mad. But I'm talking like more like this to this is kind of what I mean. However, I have a feeling that not only is how they do that in the anime, but I think it kind of lends itself well to obviously the transformation, because it's kind of a painful transformation, right? It's obviously Trunks bulking himself up and just absolutely letting all of his power loose. I do like as well that they actually bothered to include this, right? When Trunks is powering up the rubber band or hair tie or whatever fabric this is that is obviously tying his hair back into a ponytail, actually catches on fire and burns off of his hair, with Trunks' hair kind of then expanding in the background. I just realized, do they ever like touch on that in Dragon Ball again? The fact that his hair tie, I mean, like, it's super cool for the scene, and I'm glad it's there because it makes this transformation so much more sick. But like, do they ever comment on the fact that like can I throw like a marshmallow at a Super Saiyan when they're powering up and like it'll fry my marshmallow in their aura? I mean, I remember they talked about like Goku Ultra Instinct, like his aura was like really hot or something like that, but I don't know. I feel like I've never heard them talk about that for Super Saiyan. Let me know if I'm just misremembering that or not remembering it at all in the comment section. But regardless, animated very well with obviously kind of popping off, right, in Trunks' hair, obviously expanding out. This shot of Trunks leaning back is super cool, looking a lot like Broly right there, but very, very cool shot right there with obviously Trunks bulking up, and of course the iconic manga panel right there of Trunks being super bulked out of his mind, and obviously the aura looks really, really good around him. I will say, I think probably out of all of these animations, if I had to pick, I would think that the transformation and maybe like one section of the super attack for Super Trunks is probably my favorite. But I think out of all the animations, I think definitely the transformation is definitely the coolest part, if I do say so myself. It's kind of a shame, I will say, that this isn't an active skill for two reasons. One, it will not get its own OST, unfortunately, because this is just, you know, an active skill that pops via passive. And the fact that this will not be voiced, right? Like, could you imagine if they had the audio of Trunks going like, you know, like when Saiyans obviously are doing those super intense transformations? That would have been so sick if that was voiced. But unfortunately, it's not. So let us move on to the super attack for Super Trunks. So we have obviously Trunks being here in the beginning. I will say, Trunks' face looks a little odd here. I'm venturing to guess that this is how it looked in the anime, though, so I'm not going to give this one as a Dokkan L. It is kind of interesting, though, how they kind of changed the shading. They have, like, both of these very Cell Saga-esque shadings, but Trunks looks like this in the beginning, and then as they fade in, right, they kind of have this light really kind of illuminate his face a lot, which, to be fair, I do remember this being how Trunks looked quite vividly in the Super Trunks form. So that is pretty cool, with obviously the lights kind of like really shifting like crazy, right? Obviously you can see it. I don't know if I have to put an epilepsy warning on this, like, and that's not even a joke. Like, honestly, like, with how much the colors kind of change and like how much the light flashes there, oh Nelly, that is kind of hard to look at on the eyes, and I don't even have epilepsy. This shot right here, though, oh my gosh. This shot right here is so sick. First of all, funny JoJo menacing text, of course. But this shot right here with Trunks powering up. Oh! If I could pick a specific shot from this animation, this would be my favorite one. But if I have to pick just an animation, then it is absolutely the transformation. But this shot right here is so gas, dude. Oh my gosh. The animation of Trunks kind of like pulsating there. The rocks flying everywhere. The dust. The aura around Trunks, oh baby, it is so nice looking. The Stinky Sprite comes in to ruin it. Ah! Obviously panning out a little bit. This is a really cool shot of perspective, though, like a change in perspective. Obviously, kind of having Trunks get engulfed by the smoke, right, with the enemy looking on. As, of course, then Trunks, right, comes bursting through the smoke. I definitely like this animation a lot, to be honest with you. I think that this is pretty cool, and obviously perspective is really, really nice, albeit the Stinky Sprite being in the forefront of the view. And I think this is animated very, very nice. For some reason, am I tripping? I know for a fact that's not the same assets, because they make new stuff for like even stuff that looks the same as before most of the time, but this looks like transforming Vegeta, the Super Saiyan Blue, like Fizz one that actually just got an easy A with Trunks, funny enough. I swear it looks like his background for his card art. That's just kind of weird. Kind of funny that it is a Trunks unit as well, his son. Regardless, though, yeah, this animation looks great with obviously Trunks charging forward. Okay. So we get to this part here. I am kind of thinking that this must be two different animations that are kind of like clipped together like this, because this feels a little bit jarring, and the way that this is animated, even in full motion, still feels a little bit choppy to me. So this part where Trunks is flying forward, fantastic. Looks great. Love it. This part, though, right, when we get to Trunks, obviously, then transitioning to this pose, first of all, the aura going from that much to this small with that is not cohesive to me. Not to mention this pose I think is a fine change, but I still would have preferred a couple of frames between it. I mean, I feel like I say that all the time in these S animations, but again, the whole point of these is to analyze and nitpick these. But Trunks' hand animation here, bro, looks a little weird. So it is in a fist, right? And then he basically goes full stop, puts his hand down at this awkward angle, right? And then puts it down flat on the ground, which doesn't even really feel like it's touching the ground. This feels like only like his first two fingers would be touching the ground, and his pinky and his thumb would be like above. I guess it's just a matter of perspective, but it looks like from how high he's floating on the ground, his hand is not flat on the ground, let alone at least it would have to be just his fingertips on the ground and not his hand flat on the ground with the way that it's animated. His hand is not like pushed out enough. And I'm assuming they're just trying to like give you a little bit of a trick of perspective, but I feel like it doesn't really work that well. Regardless though, with his hand there, we then have Trunks bring his legs forward, right? And we immediately have this pretty awkward change in pose, I feel like, where obviously Trunks goes to do this sweep kick, right? Where he kind of brings his legs forward a little bit. You can see that this is a different asset. They do kind of just twist Trunks' top half on his arm, which I mean works fine for the animation, I suppose. But then obviously we have the immediate leg forward, which again, I kind of wish there was another one of maybe his bottom half his leg there and then there, right? And then maybe finally out to the side. But then obviously we have this sweep kick. And it's just kind of a weird perspective, right? This whole section. I guess it makes sense because obviously technically Cell is right in front of Trunks. So it makes sense why he's looking forward for this, and I guess this is how a sweep kick would look, but I kind of felt like that Cell was off to the side, considering the fact that that's kind of the perspective they gave you here, though to be fair, obviously that kind of doesn't make sense because of course, you know, of course they couldn't put Cell in the middle. I mean, then you would literally wouldn't be able to see Trunks coming forward. But still, it just feels a little bit awkward to me, and even in the full-time speed, right, like if we go to normal speed for this one, I still feel like the leg movement is a little choppy in my opinion, right? Like it's not so bad, but it just feels a little like, I don't know, it feels a little weird to me. It feels a little bit jank. I think that is the right word to describe how I feel about that part of the essay. Regardless though, we have obviously the kick kind of come out, right, from Trunks. Oops. Oh, I forgot YouTube can do this, actually. Wait, why haven't I been using this to scrub through videos before? Forgetful old me. Anyway, obviously the kick forward, I think that looks fine. I will say, though, it is a little weird having Trunks' leg go out and him not fully spin around, right? And obviously they just like tilt the asset forward, and it doesn't really feel like that Trunks is like pushing himself off the ground. It kind of just feels like they're tilting a little bit. To be fair, you can see Trunks kind of looks like he a little bit of pushes himself off the ground there with his hand that's kind of extended. But regardless, you then immediately jump to this asset where he's in a lot more of a tighter pose, which again, I feel like there should be a lot more in between that. And not to mention, obviously, the aura is kind of just a static PNG that is kind of just like pulsing, right? I guess it is two different ones because the lines are a little bit stretched in the middle, but or I guess they could just be stretching it out, but to me it definitely looks like it's two different ones that just look very similar. I mean, yeah, I think they are different because of the lines that are present like there. You can kind of see them moving a little bit. But anyway, I will say for a quick snappy pose movement, this is where it should be, right? Obviously having Trunks do this immediate like, oh, you know, he's all balled up, right? And then bam, right? The quick kick to the head. That definitely is very, very well placed. And I like the little bit of the red kind of like kapow effect, I guess is what you would call this, right? Almost like comic-esque that they add to this animation. I think that's a nice touch. Hydrate or dihydrate, ladies and gentlemen. It's hot out there. Regardless, though, we then have Trunks kind of squatting down, which again From a continuity standpoint, also feels a little bit weird because Trunks is currently staring at the ground right now with him doing this flip kick, and then you immediately cut to Trunks here, right now squatted down. Again, from a continuity standpoint, it just doesn't really flow for me. We have Trunks obviously squatting down a little bit before he flies up. I think that the fly up animation looks fine. Nothing really too crazy there, right? This cut is fine, obviously going from Trunks a little bit bigger to then him kind of being a little bit smaller in the back and with him flying forward. And the couple of rapid punches here. This is very reminiscent of some older Dokkan essays. I really feel like these punches don't pack too much of an impact, and I can see that they tried to throw a couple of in-between frames in there to kind of give them a little bit more flow, right? A little bit more fluidity. But to me, it just looks like, I don't want to say cheap, but like I feel like that section right there, right? Even if we look at this in normal speed, I feel like this section right there is kind of something that belongs in like a free-to-play essay, is kind of the vibe that I get it from. Maybe they should have just pulled the camera in a little bit more. It's not the worst sequence of like a rapid-fire punch that I've ever seen, for sure, but I just feel like it could have had a little bit more oomph behind it, right? That is definitely how I feel sometimes about these rapid fire essays. I feel like for me with Dokkan, either they're a hit or a miss, personally. Regardless, we obviously have Trunks disappear off the screen, and then we have Trunks appear behind Cell, which this part actually looks pretty good with the little punch, or I guess it's almost more like a backhand, to be honest with you, as well having that little anime-esque effect. And then we have Trunks' Dokkan art, which again, don't feel like this is a Dokkan Fest art. I don't know. It looks very, like, unfeatured unit-esque, but maybe it's just because I'm not used to seeing Trunks as a Dokkan Fest. Regardless, though, we have this close-up shot of Trunks with the smirk here, and then we have the glowing key ball in his hand, which I will say the key blast looks pretty good. I do like this very anime-esque background with the light effect there. And of course, the ball hitting Cell before exploding, right? And then you have the shot of Super Trunks at the back. I feel like he has a lot of extra hair on that asset for some reason, like more than he usually does when he's Super Trunks. I think for this part, right, I do like the kind of squatting down and then zooming out to this, right? I think that that is very well done. The only part of this animation that I kind of don't like is how they just twist him here, right? Where they kind of just literally tilt the PNG a little bit. I mean, I guess that is how it would look if he's flying, but it just feels a little bit off to me. And then obviously this to this, I feel like there should have been at least a couple more frames in between that of him forming the key blast. But the key blast looks great, though. The lighting effect on it is fantastic. You can even see it reflecting on Trunks' gloves there. Alright, so we finally move on to the active skill. Again, keep in mind, we are going to be watching the version of this that has Super Trunks when we get the data download for this guy, because of course, since this is just the animations right now, you know, we literally don't have the full animations for him, unfortunately. But, again, assuming that this is quite literally just the same animation, except that it is Super Saiyan Trunks rather than Super Trunks, the animation itself is not really going to be any different. Alright, so we have Super Trunks fly up, right, and kind of pause right before Cell. I will say the fly up looks cool. The impact frame, right, is very, very nice. Definitely like that a lot. My man kind of looking like a Sonic character, low-key. This, by the way, this is a screenshot that is such a strange one to use as an example of the stinky sprites, but by golly, I think this is one that's a winner. Look at how crystal clear Trunks' lines look compared to... My gosh, bro. My man looking like a game on the NES. Oh my gosh, look at those pixels, baby. Yuck. Regardless, though, Trunks looking pretty good there. I do think his face looks a little strange, but again, that is probably because they're trying to be anime accurate, I would have to imagine. The electricity effects, though, however, look really, really good there. And we do have Trunks' hair moving a little bit here. I do feel like his eyes are a little bit too small, and something about the proportion of his head feels a little bit off, but nonetheless, I mean, I think this shot looks cool. Otherwise, obviously, we have a little bit of a zoom out with this shot here. This does look very meme-worthy. I don't even know what a meme of this would be, honestly, but it just looks funny to me. I'm not going to lie. I know this is what happened in the anime, but the fact Trunks is just T-posing in the air just looks kind of silly. The electricity effect looks great, though, and I do like that they bothered to animate the hair there. We then cut to Trunks close up, which obviously this is the active skill part where he's obviously actually talking. You can see that, of course, they animated the lip flaps there. And this section looks really good. Obviously, it is the like kind of pinnacle part of the active skill, so it makes sense. You do have this very, very quick transition, right? It's kind of weird, I will say, too. Trunks' hair, I feel like it's just very inconsistent. I mean, to be fair, Super Trunks' hair, I think, is kind of drawn inconsistently in the anime anyway. But I feel like his hair is a lot more, like, fluffy and kind of frizzy here. And then when we go to here, it feels like there's almost not as much on the top. And there's more, like, in the back. I don't know. It could just also be the angle kind of playing tricks on you. Regardless, though, we obviously have the aura kind of flowing over Trunks too, which looks good. And we still have this yellow electricity in the background, which looks nice. There is a another pose change, another pose jump to Trunks obviously bringing his hands forward. Whoops, I did not mean to go that far forward. I apologize about that. Right here, right? I do kind of wish that there was something a little bit more in between this, right? Even just one frame, but I suppose it does kind of emphasize as well, you know, Trunks pushing his hands out to immediately, like, start firing these blasts at Cell. I do feel like Trunks' face looks a little bit off here, but it looks a little bit like his head looks a little bit too small for his body, but to be fair, that is kind of just Super Trunks. That is basically just the essence of the super form. Their head always looks a little bit too small for their body, but that is kind of how the super form works, because they're bulking up their body and obviously their head don't get bigger. Regardless, though, I really, really like the lighting effect that they have on this, right? This is pretty cool, with obviously the light sort of beginning to envelop Trunks as the blast grows bigger, right? I do kind of wish that they had, I know I'm a broken record here, ladies and gentlemen, maybe one more softer frame before they immediately went to the bright light. Regardless, though, the impact frame there is cool. And the only thing I will say that is kind of weird about transitioning from that to that is that I feel like the implication of this shot here is almost like Trunks is launching it off, right? With especially the light beginning to glow and the blast, you know, like glowing. But I guess to be fair, that's also just kind of me not perceiving it how the animators wanted me to perceive it, I suppose. Regardless, though, we now have the side shot of obviously Trunks charging the blasts, and then of course blast them off of Cell, which I think this particular shot looks pretty good. And we have a very nice fade to white, with of course the blast then flying off. I will say this ending feels not very impactful to me, right? You obviously have Trunks launch the blast and launch the enemy away, which I think, again, this shot is very nicely animated. The shading and the lighting on this shot is beautiful. But the fade to white, they kind of just cut out, like, everything that happens in between, I guess. Like, you know, maybe they could have had a shot of the enemy kind of flying away, right? Or Trunks with his arms out or something like that, still firing the blast a little bit. And I'm all for the white fade in and the white fade out, because that looks so much better than cutting between scenes. And I would much rather have this transition right here than just cutting between one scene to another and having it feel a lot more jank. So if they're going to do something like this, I'd much rather they do that. But I feel like there's just a lot missing there. It feels like it just goes by too quickly, for sure. This end shot doesn't look bad by any means. Trunks is animated nicely and the explosion is animated nicely, but the active skill is just so quick. Like, if we look at this in full-time speed, right? Let's go back here. If we go to the beginning, this is where it starts, right? Trunks pulls up, T-poses on my man, says, "I tell goodbye," and blasts him away. And that's the end. It's just really, really short. And I mean, again, I feel like the animation isn't that long in terms of, like, the actual attack itself in the anime. But I don't know. It just feels really condensed for Dokkan. And again, I kind of get the feeling that why a lot of the reasons why a lot of these animations feel very lickety-split, very quick-paced, right? Is probably because not only, again, I mean, in the anime, right, they're not that long, right, as, you know, the source material they're taking from. But of course, again, you have to keep in mind when this unit is releasing, because, you know, of course, they're releasing in between Tanabata and Worldwide, which are obviously two celebrations where the animations are absolutely insane. I will say, I feel like, to kind of wrap up here and give my conclusive thoughts, I feel like I have been almost seeming a little bit negative throughout this video. Obviously, the whole point is to kind of nitpick these and really, like, dissect them, right, and give you my honest opinion, because I'm not gonna lie to you and, like, tell you I like something that I don't like. I do think that after doing this video, this is a example of one of these essays that I actually like a lot better after doing the animation analysis rather than the first couple of watch throughs of the essay, right? Which is good because sometimes it's the opposite and I like the animation worse. So it's a good thing when I like an animation more after the video. My thing about this one is that it is certainly not the worst Dokkan animations that I have ever seen. Not by a long shot, certainly not the worst animations that we have seen this year either, right? Every time I think about that, I still think of AGL Kale. I still think, I'll have to go back and like look at them to kind of do like a halfway point who's the worst so far this year. But the first unit when I think of stinky animations is AGL Kale for Dokkan Fest every single time, bar none. And I think that this guy far exceeds Dokkan Fest Kale in not only, right, the animation quality, obviously the style is really on point. I mean, I think Dragon Ball Super style, you know, Kale did a fine job of implementing that, but you know, this is obviously very reminiscent of the Cell Saga art style and aesthetic. And I will say a lot of the assets are a lot more high quality made, and they obviously tried to put a lot more effort into the animations than I think they certainly did for a unit like AGL Kale. But they still just kind of feel, a lot of them feel like they're missing something, and I feel like they're just very basic. I mean, I guess that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Not every animation has to be the most insane thing your eyes have ever witnessed. But I feel like that they just feel a little bit too quick, right? They feel, I don't want to say empty because I feel like that's too, like, glass half empty kind of mentality for these. But I feel like they're just a little bit too short, and they just have a couple of things that make me not put them a little bit higher on my sort of, like, you know, status of how I would rank an essay. But I definitely want to hear what you guys have to think in the comment section below. Please let me know what you think of the boy Super Trunks. I will be very curious to hear what you guys think. Let me know if you're going to be summoning for this guy as well. Unfortunately, I know for a lot of people, not just because of the fact that, you know, of the unit that it is, but obviously because of the timing of the unit being in between Tanabata and Worldwide, I know, unfortunately, this guy will probably get skipped by plenty of people, me included, considering I'm still on my Super Saiyan 4 Goku Despair arc at the time of recording this video. But, yeah, let me know what you guys think. Let me know as well if you did enjoy this video in the comments section below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy. I cannot wait, by the way, to take a look at those worldwide animations. And it will be interesting to see, too, if this unit ends up somehow giving us a little bit of a hint as what's to come for some aspect of worldwide. We'll have to see. Definitely leave your speculation in the comments section below as well on that one, too. I don't know how they would do another Cell Saga Gohan, because I feel like we've used all those animations already, but hey, who knows? Thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.